This program is sponsored by North Valley Church of Christ.
There's a message true and glad for the sinful and the sad. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out, ring it out. It will give them courage new, it will help them to be true. Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out, ring it out.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Redeeming the Time. I'm your host, Chris Macy, and I am the minister here with the North Valley Church of Christ. It is May the 9th, and man, the weather's been great. It cooled down last few weeks, right? And I think this week is supposed to be a little cooler. In fact, let me pull up my weather app. I actually pay for, you got the Weather Channel app on Android. I'm sure you got it on Apple also, but I do the premium membership because I can't stand all the ads, and I check this thing all the time. So today 88, tomorrow 75, Thursday 85, and then the low 90s for the weekend. But still, man, that's great. That is good weather. This is why we live in Phoenix. Awesome weather right now. So I hope you're getting outside. I hope you're enjoying that. We have been looking at, let me pull that up here on my schedule. Yeah, we've been looking at 1 Timothy these last few weeks. I want to take a break from that, not a long break, just this week. We'll get back to 1 Timothy next week. But I want to look at 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 to 25 this afternoon. This is a lesson titled Our Blessings That We Have with Submission. Or maybe better to say that, Blessings of Submission. We'll call it that. Because you may be thinking, well, we know about submission. We're supposed to submit to God and submit to one another in love, and we know those things. But we're going to hit on that quite a few things that you're probably going to know quite well. But stick with me, because I think when we get to the end, I want to really bring to light something that is we forget, or we don't get too much in our minds or a deep thought on as we get toward the end of this section. So let me start here with this story. You know the movie The Karate Kid, right? Now I know there was a remake. I never saw the remake. I know the 80s version where you got Daniel. He's that skinny kid, got bullied a lot, but he had a neighbor named Mr. Miyagi, and he would teach him to karate. But Mr. Miyagi agreed under only one condition. Daniel needed to submit totally to his instruction, right? Never question his methods. So Daniel agreed. He showed up the next day, eager to learn, and Mr. Miyagi had him paint a fence. And Mr. Miyagi demonstrated the precise motion. Here's what you need to do. Up, down, up, down. You can't see it, but he had a certain way he wanted to use his wrist and hand to paint the fence. It took Daniel days to finish the job. Next, Mr. Miyagi told Daniel to wash and wax 3 weather-beaten cars again, prescribing specific motions. This is the one you probably know well. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. Precise movements. And no, Daniel, he wondered, what does this have to do with karate? But he didn't say anything. And finally, Mr. Miyagi had him sand the deck, again using a prescribed stroke. At the end of the day, Daniel, he hit his limit. He said to Mr. Miyagi, I thought you were going to teach me karate, but all you have done is have me do your unwanted chores. Daniel broke Mr. Miyagi's one condition, and the old man's face pulsed with anger. I have been teaching you karate. Now defend yourself, he said. He threw a punch, and Daniel instinctively defended himself with an arm motion exactly like the one from his chores. Then Mr. Miyagi went to kick him, and Daniel averted the blow with, again, a motion he used in the chores. And after he successfully defended himself on several more blows, Mr. Miyagi simply walked away, leaving Daniel to discover what the master had known all along. Skill comes from repeating the correct but seemingly mundane motion again and again. He learned the blessing of submission to his master. So must you and I. We may not always understand God's instructions, but submission demands that we obey the master anyway. That word submission That's the key to this first section from 1 Peter. And the keys to submission are humility and trust. We live in a culture of pride and extreme rebellion. Oh, man, that rebellion can be clearly seen. Children, teenagers, young adults. But they're certainly not the only ones who find it hard to submit. At times, most of us find it hard to submit to those in authority. And the ones in authority that people despise the most, government officials, right? Maybe it's in your employer. Maybe it's your teacher if you're in high school or college. Maybe you're your teachers or parents. Maybe it's the police officers. Interestingly enough, in our scripture section today, Peter is going to address submission to several of those authority figures. So I want us to spend time discovering some of the blessings that come from learning to be submissive. And as we look at 1 Peter, we might be surprised that Peter doesn't give us advice on how to reduce stress or how to make our problems go away. Nope. If things are difficult, it looks like they're going to get worse, Peter's advice, submit. Submit. That word submit, compound verb. It means to order under. It is a military expression that literally means to arrange in formation under the commander. Submission is simply the recognition of God's authority in our lives and ordering ourselves under God. God, is our creator, and He established the home. He established human government. He established the church. And therefore, God has the right to tell you and me, everyone, how these institutions ought to be run. When we look at the book of Acts, have you ever heard your preacher, or maybe you thought about this or had a discussion with someone about this, like, boy, I wish the church could grow like it did in the New Testament era in the book of Acts. Boy, thousands at a time, thousands. Look how the church grew. It's amazing. But, it can't happen today because we don't have apostles. We don't have miracles. It's just impossible. We can't do it. Why and how did the church grow back then? I'm going to submit to you it was submission. That they had submitted themselves under God. And we'll get more into that as we work through this lesson in 1 Peter. So here's point number 1. From 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, submit to God's commands for righteous living. Here's the first few verses. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lusts which wage war against the soul. Keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation. So, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, right? Abstain from fleshly lusts, man, which wage war against your soul. And what is fleshly lust? The desires of the eyes, right? The things we want, our desires. That's and it sounds mostly like sexual desires, right? We have a major problem with that, and that goes all over the place. Abstain from that. That wage war against your soul. It tears you apart. It tears you down. Stay away from it. Keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles. Now, there, he's not saying Gentiles, Christian and non-Christian. That's going to be anyone who is outside the body of Christ. Because when they slander you as evildoers, they're going to notice that they're not evildoers at all. And what he's saying is, not the ones that are slandering you, but all those who are watching. And they're seeing what happens. Because isn't that what was happening to the Christians in the book of Acts? They were being accused of being evil and turning the world upside down. And they're going after him. They wanted to stone Paul and kill him and all the Christians and arrest them and put them in prison. And everyone's watching this, right? And they're thinking, I'm sure at first they thought, well, okay, yeah, we need to stop these people. But then they begin to realize, oh, wait, there's nothing wrong with this group. Why are we going after these Christians? Why are we going after them? They seem like such good people, and we keep arresting them. And more people are getting baptized. How is that even possible? They're being persecuted. They're being threatened with jail, or they're being thrown in jail, being killed. and yet more people are being baptized? Why is that? Because they see what's happening, and because of that, they're glorifying God. So in the day of visitation, there's more. All because they submitted. They didn't revile against their accusers. They didn't go against the rule of law. They allow these things to happen. I'm not saying that you just roll over and allow it to happen. Paul didn't do that. He appealed to Caesar. He said, you're going to beat me? I'm a Roman. You can't do that. But he never, ever took matters in his own hands and broke the law because they were breaking the law. Or rile against this, say we should overthrow the Roman government. And we'll get more into that here in just a moment. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But there are many good reasons, though, why we should abstain from sinful desires. But Peter wants us to realize the positive effect that our holiness, being holy is being set apart, can have on those that see our good deeds. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify who? Your Father in heaven. That's what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. Now at verse 12, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation. Non-Christians are watching us. Some non-Christian people will speak out against us. Some are looking for excuses to reject the gospel of Christ. We don't want to give them any ammunition to attack us or the faith. Our good works must back up our good words. Our first task is to submit to God by living in the world with love and holiness in such a way that the people around us see the radical difference between the two worlds. We may be in this world, but we are not of this world. I like what I heard one person say. I don't know exactly who gave this first illustration, but it's like a boat in the sea. The boat belongs in the water. Water does not belong in the boat. Yeah, we belong in the world, but the world does not belong in us, right? We are alien sojourners, and we are going to move beyond this one day. All right, verses 13 to 17. Here it is. Submit to civil authority. After setting the tone, everyone's watching us. Now here's how you submit. First, civil authority, verses 13 and to 17. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free men, and do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bondslaves of God. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. Okay. So notice first off that our submission to civil authority is for the Lord's sake. For the Lord's sake. Ultimately, we are to do all things to God's or for God's glory and for His sake. We are therefore to submit ourselves to the earthly authorities because we are submissive to God's sovereign authority. Another thing we notice is that Peter tries to help us to see that our submission to civil authority is to be broad to every human institution. That includes the ones at the top of the power structure and the ones all the way down. Our submission starts with the king or the emperor. In our system, it's the president. And then it includes those appointed under the president within our government, all the way down to the DMV, right? The Department of Motor Vehicles Department. When you go down there, submit to what they say. Ultimately, we're submitting ourselves not to a specific person in office, but we're submitting to the authority of that office. The person holding an office at any given time may not be a person of integrity who is worthy of personal respect, but if they hold an office, then we must respect the office. Okay? And I know that's hard to do, but you'll see why here in a moment. And Peter mention one of the essential purposes of government, which is to promote the public good by punishing those who do evil and praising those who do good. And unfortunately, this ideal was not always realized in Peter's day, nor is it reached in our own day as well. Now, what is amazing to me is, you take into consideration that Peter was writing these words during the reign of the Emperor Nero, who was not good nor kind to Christians. It's amazing to realize that he didn't criticize. Peter was not criticizing the Roman government, was he? Nor did he call for it to be overthrown. The church has been able to live and grow in all kinds of political systems and under all kinds of administrations, both those for the church and those against it. What was happening to the Christians? They were being used as scapegoats for the burning of Rome. They were being accused of turning the world upside down. No, they didn't do any of those things. That was other people, and the government knew it. And yet the Christians were being blamed for it. They were being run out of Rome. They were being running out of cities. They were being arrested. They were being killed. They were having all their possessions taken away. And never once do we see in our New Testaments telling them, you need to fight against this. And yet here I am. I'm a minister. I've been a preacher for quite a while now. And I've had people tell me that, hey, we need to talk more about how we need to stand up against the tyranny in our country. We're going to lose this country. I have no problem with us vocalizing and standing up for what is right in our country as far as, was the election stolen, was it not, and where we may stand on that. And I do believe there were a lot of shenanigans in the elections. And I think the best way to deal with it is through the courts and do it legally and don't come across as, all these conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that everything is. Sometimes they call it conspiracy theory when it's not, just to try to give it a bad name. Just always be honest, be a good person, and respect and show honor to the authority that is out there. Whether that authority is helping you or not, you show respect for it. That's the Christian way. Excuse me, I got a bit of an allergies here. But notice the other important thing here, the why of submission to civil government at verse 15. Here's why. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. We are to submit to every authority in order to shut the mouths of the gospel's critics. Integrity, obedience, that impeccable moral fiber are all effective character tools to muzzle the enemies of Christianity. And there's going to be more to that here in a moment. And then finally, submit to earthly masters. Here's what Peter writes in verses 18. Where am I at here? Let's do 18 to 20. I don't know why I got it going 18 to 25, but 18 to 20 first. Servants, be submissive to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and gentle, but also to those who are unreasonable. For this finds favor, if for the sake of conscience toward God, a person bears up under sorrows when suffering unjustly. For what credit is there if, when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure it with patience? But if when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God. All right. If you're like me, when you read this passage about the masters and slaves, servants, but it's slaves, you maybe have one or two reactions. You immediately switch the context to employers and employees. Or maybe you get stuck on the moral conviction that slavery is wrong because in our country, we think of slavery, oh man, we have a bad history with that, and it's understandable. But those things took place in the past, but it was bad. And we did it based on race, and it was not good. And we may think, why isn't Peter telling the slaves to break free and get out of slavery? Don't tell them to be good slaves, right? Get out of that. But Peter's not attempting to condone or condemn slavery. He is telling them, and he's telling us, how to live our Christian life in a godly manner in whatever circumstances we might find ourselves. In the Romans' times, slavery was much different. Some people sold themselves as slaves in order to get a leg up in society of where they were at, being so low. Or maybe they had so much debt they had to sell themselves into slavery. Or, as the vast majority of slaves, they were taken from a war that they had lost, and so they took them as slaves from that war, and they're in that permanent condition. Some could buy themselves out, others just wanted to stay in it, but no matter what, everything was run by slaves just about. Did you know that in the Roman world, most doctors, teachers, musicians, and secretaries were slaves? They were not people being paid, they were slaves. But back to Peter. Notice how he began by pointing out that this submission to masters was to be done in reverent fear to God. He is the number one master of our lives. And Paul said something similar in Colossians 3:22. Slaves, in all things, obey those who are your masters on earth, not with external service, as those who merely please men, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. The God-fearing attitude of the slaves was to be exercised with both good and gentle masters, and also with those who are harsh and unreasonable. So it goes without saying that it is easy to work for masters who are kind and generous. That's easy. But it's hard to work for those who are nasty and are unfair. Ultimately, though, God is pleased when believers do their work in a humble and submissive way for their superiors regardless. Whether it was a slave in Peter's day, patiently enduring brutal treatment, or whether modern-day employee, not I'm having a hard time speaking this morning, but going against an unkind, unjust supervisor. God's pleased with that. The Lord wants believers who are suffering unjustly in the workplace to not falter in their witness, in their showing the light of God in them, but to humbly and patiently accept the unjust treatment, knowing that God has sovereign control over everything. And God promises to bless and reward. We're at 22 minutes already. Let me start bringing this to an end. Look at the last part, verses 21 to 25. For you have been called for this purpose. Here's one of those purposes. If you ever ask that question, what's my purpose? Here's one. You've been called for this purpose. Since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps, who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. And while being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. And he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sin and to live to righteousness. For by his wounds you were healed. For you were continually straying like sheep, but now you have returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. So that's it, right there. That's our purpose, to follow the example of Christ. Did Jesus deserve to go to the cross? He did not. When they were reviling him, could he have rebuked that and shown how they were wrong? He could have, but he did not. He didn't want that, remember? In the Garden of Gethsemane, he asked the Lord God if this cup would pass from him, but not his will, but God's will be done. And God's will was for him to submit, show them the way. And that's exactly what the New Testament Christians did. They did exactly what Jesus did. They submitted to all authorities. They did not give up on the things of God. If they were being told to blaspheme Jesus, they wouldn't do that, but they would submit to the authorities in whatever possible way. If they had to go to jail, they went to jail. If they had to be put to death, well, they were put to death. But they stayed faithful to the Lord, and they would submit. They would submit and not revile against these institutions that God put forth. And Jesus is our example. If he did it for us, then we need to do it too. If we want to grow like the New Testament church, guess what? Submit. Submit. That means when they come after us, when they want to throw me in jail because I'm preaching against a homosexual lifestyle, so be it. Let it happen. Don't fight it. If they're going to threaten my own family, now that's where it's going to get hard. If they're going to say, Chris, we're going to arrest your children too. We're going to take you and your wife, we're going to send you guys to jail. We're going to take your children, and we're going to put them in the public school system, and we're going to teach them to be transgender. Oh, now that is going to be hard. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I could let that happen, but what should I do? Man, I hope that the teachings stay in their heart. If you train up a child the way he ought to go, he will never depart from it, right? And hope that they hold firm to it. Keep teaching. Prepare them for what's coming. We have to do that. But what about this? We all know about Osama bin Laden, right? The terrorist that orchestrated the 9/11 attacks. We do not like him. I think it'd be fair to say we hate him. Hated him. He's gone now. But what if an angel, not that this would happen today, but what if an angel came down from heaven before Osama bin Laden was killed and said, I want you to take his place. You die for him so that he can live. Now, he's going to still have the choice to do whatever he wants, but I want you to die for what he did so that he may live. Would you do it? Would you do it? Christ did it for us, for all mankind, knowing that most would still deny him and work against his children. But he did it anyway. So must you and I. We must submit. We want the church to grow like it did in the New Testament times. We need to act like the church of the New Testament time. And we need to submit. Read through 1 Peter 2, verses 11 to 25. You'll learn a lot. Keep it in your minds. Keep it in your heart. And as always, let us redeem the time while it's still ours. Thank you, and may the Lord bless you.
Ring it out, ring it out, ring it out.
This program was sponsored by North Valley Church of Christ. To hear this program again, go to FamilyValuesRadio1010.com and click on the podcast page and find this program and many others right there on FamilyValuesRadio1010.com.